Building a great roller coaster in Planet Coaster 2 can feel frustrating, and coming up with a realistic ride layout can seem completely overwhelming. So, I'm going to give you the building blocks for you to create a fantastic yet realistic coaster with ease. So by the end of this video, you're going to feel completely empowered to turn your janky coaster into a creation worthy of Universal Studios. The obvious place to start is, well, by picking a roller coaster. Where else would you start? So if we click on the coaster tab and it brings up this, and you get a load of blueprints. Now, if we select a blueprint, you get one of these. A pretty standard coaster, right? But we don't want standard, that's why you're here. You want to make something more exciting, more realistic. So if we click on Create Custom, and it brings up a list of roller coasters, where you get a big old list, stretch it up there so you can see them all, and you get all of these. Now, they all do various different things. They all have special gimmicks, etc., and different scenarios where you would use them. Now we want something standard, like a standard just looping coaster, I guess. And well, first one is a standard looping, but it's not quite what I want. I want a bigger, more high capacity ride, so we could pick something like this B&M Flawless, or V&M in the game. But I don't want something like that, I want something even more standard. So we're going to go for the B&M Sit Down, and to place it, you just click on it, and it gives you the ride. And I don't know about you, but I have never seen a coaster station on the floor. They are always in the air, so if you hold shift and then drag it up, then it floats. But it's really hard to determine where this should sit. It gives no indication of the height. It's really hard to tell. So here is pro tip number 1. If you go and click on paths, I'm going to set that to 4 meters wide, and then have all the snapping on, etc., and just place down a path anywhere and drag it up so it has some stairs. And I'm going to make it so there's 2 flights of stairs, and then flatten out and go in a straight line. And I'm going to come over 2, so it's 8 meters long, and then just straight off of that, and that gives us a place for the coaster station to snap to. So if we go to the coaster and bring up our B&M Sit Down again, and then turn it by just hold Z, by the way, if you don't know, and then shift, and it should snap to it. Sometimes it will snap without, sometimes you need to hold shift and it will snap, but anyway, it snaps there. You click place, and bam, you're now at the right height, in the right place. Easy. So coasters work by gravitational potential energy, which means basically you're up high and then you fall. And the way coasters go about getting that energy is either through a launch, usually magnetic or hydraulics, or a chain lift, which is far more standard, which is what we're going to do. But we're going to start off with a standard piece of track. We're going to make it really small. And what this allows you to do is either change where the lift tool is going to be, by sort of what direction, or just allows you to have a small straight bit which would usually have a tyre drive in real life, which eases the train at the right speed onto the chain lift so you're not just sort of jolted as you leave the station. But kind of irrelevant for the game, but that's why they're there in real life. So we're going to turn on the chain element. We're going to make sure it's 6 meters long. Catwalk should be on. 5 miles an hour is really slow. I'd up it to 7 or 8, by the way. And then we are going to pick an angle to go at. Now angles are quite interesting because the coasters have different angles. They are anywhere between 25 degrees for an older coaster, all the way up to sort of 35, 40 for more modern ones, and on sort of like a dive machine, for example, even steeper, going up to like 45. But we're going to split the difference on this, and we are just going to go for a standard 30-degree lift hill. Because, well, I'm trying to do the most sort of standard coaster I can. So we're going to go with this 30 degrees, and we built that 6 meter piece. And then I'm going to stretch it out to 20 meters. And why am I going for that? Because we want the height to be anywhere between 30 meters and 60 meters. And the reason for that is that should be between about 100 and 200 foot. Above 200 foot, the coaster would be called a hypercoaster, and I don't really want to go for that. So I'm going to stick in this sort of, 35 meter region, which should be about 120 foot thereabouts. So to do that, I've gone up to 26. I'm going to probably... I will place another one. And then I'm going to draw this back down to 6 meters, like we did at the bottom, and then just level out to the flat. But I'm not going to stop there with a chain. I'm actually going to go down again. I'm going to aim for sort of 15 degrees thereabouts, drop it back to 4 meters in length, and then click place. The game will then turn off the chain lift element, and then we are going to level out to a straight piece of track. The reason we're doing that is because it allows the coaster to leave the train without pulling on the chain itself, which burns out the gears quicker. Modern coasters don't actually do this. We've got far better at sort of disengaging that sort of mechanism, but currently I'm doing a more old version, so that's why I've got the sort of pre-drop sort of element there. Before we go any further, I've got to explain to you what heartlining is. So I've set up this little demonstration coaster. We've got a little launch section and then 2 rolls. Now, the first roll is just how the game would do it. If you sort of start turning it, it turns the track. And then the second one is with a banking offset of 1 meter. So as you can see, the track is sort of rolling around the centre of where your heart would be, hence the name Heartline Roll. So I'm going to demonstrate how this affects the train. So if we switch it to testing and watch it launch, what you'll see as it goes through this first roll is that the riders, particularly their head and heart, get thrown downwards and then twisted up, and it's horrible. Whereas the second one, they go through this lovely roll around the centre, so it feels much smoother. And let me just demonstrate that a bit clearer by if we get on the ride. So we go through the launch, and then the first roll, it breaks our necks there because it does this weird, horrible snapping. Whereas the second one, lovely, quite an enjoyable inversion, right? Until we come off the tracks, and then boom! Explosions. I thoroughly enjoyed the explosions, that's why I left them in. So, how do we go about making that lovely heartline roll? So if you go on to the end of the ride, and then we are going to build a section of track. And in here, I seem to be in edit mode, there we are, in construction mode, and here we got a little slider, which is banking offset. So without banking offset, if I just turn this track, it just, well, turns the track. I'll make that longer so it's easy to see. So it's just immediately flipping it. Whereas 1 meter, the track sort of kicks outwards. And if I do it to 2 meters, it's even more. But you'd use 2 meters for a taller train. These trains are quite short, so 1 meter will do. So if I just do this 1 meter turn, and then just keep doing that, so it's 90 degrees each time, and then at the end, all we've got is the same heartline roll. Now, smoothing would sort that out, but basically it's the same as the other one. And it's as simple as that. So we're going to use that technique going forwards on the rest of the roller coaster. When it comes to the first drop, there's some key decisions to make. Now, I'm going to recommend that you turn around. Hence why I'm turning that banking offset up to 1 meter to keep the heart lining that we just discussed. Now, turning around is key for one reason. When you look at the coaster from above, you end up with a really straight line if you continue the drop as you normally would. So you just keep going and going and going. Now, the likelihood of finding a straight line like that in a real park is pretty slim. You need some kind of turn somewhere, either at the bottom of the lift or the top of the lift, to turn it around. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm going to turn it around in a good old-fashioned style that a B&M would. So I'm going to make a slight curve and start angling it downwards, but not massively. What I wanted to do is complete the turn and then go into the drop. Now, when it comes to doing this turn, I would highly recommend don't stick to 90-degree angles. It makes your coaster look boring, and that's definitely what we don't want to do. You want it to look exciting and interesting. So what I'm going to do here is take it sort of like 70 degrees so that we drop slightly off. I would also recommend that your big drop is visible from the queue line, because when you're waiting, you want to see the most impressive bit, which of course is the first drop and the first big element. So that's what I'm doing here. So I've turned the corner, I've straightened out the track, and now I want to go into a descent. So I've gone for 45 degrees on that first piece, and in the second one, I'm aiming for like 70 degrees. You can go anywhere really between 80 and sort of 50. 50 would be very drawn out. 80 is quite on the steep side, so I think 70 is a nice sweet spot. We want a nice straight piece, and then we want to gradually even out. Because the lower we are, the faster we're going, and the higher G-forces you're going to get. So that's what we're doing. We're going to make sure that we're nice and gradual in smoothing out to the level, and then from there we're going to enter a series of fun elements. So we're going to start off by building a loop. Now, there's plenty of loops in the game. There's all sorts of elements, and here's the classic loop. You could also have something like a banana roll. What a great name, by the way. But in my opinion, they're not quite what you want, and I'll explain why. So this loop here, when you enter the element, this end of the sort of element section is fixed. It can't move. It's permanently locked at sort of that banking and that angle, which is fine for this drop, but if you came in at a funny angle, you wouldn't be able to change it, so you'd have this weird snap in the ride. So we're going to build our own. Now, how we do that is we are going to turn angle snap on to 11.25 and then go back to standard. And then we're going to drag this track to 11 meters and pull it up one, so it's at 11.25, and we're going to place that. We're then going to pull this one up to an angle of 45 degrees and drop that back to 10 meters in length. We're then going to take the next one and go to 90 degrees and drop it down again, this time to 8 meters. We're then going to pull this one back down to 1.4 whatever, and then we're going to shorten that down to 7 meters, and then we're going to repeat that, shorten it to 5 and build the top of the loop, and we're just going to mirror that. So we're going to have this 5 meter segment go down to 33, we keep it at 5 and place, and then we're going to go down to the vertical and extend it to 7 meters, and we're going to place that one when the game is not fighting me on what length it wants to be, but I get there eventually. So we're going to just mirror what we were doing. So next one, we're going to go to 135, I think is the equivalent of I think it was 8 meters in length, place, and then do the same with the final two of what we did before. So no, 10 meters I think it was, to 125, and then 11 meters to 0, and you'll notice that it's intersecting itself, but don't worry about that, we're going to come back and fix that later. You'll also see that the loop is a really odd shape, but that's fine, that's by design, because I wanted this to be as easy as possible to follow and for you to be able to replicate. So what we're going to do now is going to start shaping the loop to what we want, so that it's the right height and the right sort of teardrop shape. But first I'm going to smooth it off, which is going to make it look really round. We don't want round, we want a teardrop so the forces are consistent throughout the loop. Now, to do that, we're going to go to the end and we're going to add a load of straight segments, and then we're going to select the whole loop in the edit mode. So we've selected that, and what we're going to do is we're just going to drag it upwards, and we're going to do that gradually and in stages. So what I want to do here, I want to grab the top and stretch that up a little, though to be honest, looking at it, that's probably a bit too much. The height's better, but it looks ridiculous. So I'm going to grab actually segment as we go. So I'm going to grab a bit of the loop apart from the bottom bit and just keep repeating that. So I'm going to take a segment off each time and then drag it higher and just keep repeating. So we get to a height of, ideally we want it to be around the 30 meter mark, probably a little taller. And the reason I want that height is the initial drop's 37, but then there's a little pre-drop, so we're really working from 35, so we want to be taking a few meters off of that height. But we want to keep making sure that we're smooth as we go, because each time you smooth it's going to bring the height down, so you're going to need to go back in and edit and try and drag it back up to the height that we want. So 31, 30, that'll do. It's probably going to go a little fast into that, but we'll see how it goes when we look at the sort of testing results. But as you can see, that loop's now a much better shape. It's more of a teardrop. Now, as you can see, the loop's currently crossing itself, so my suggestion on how you fix this is we build a load of straight pieces afterwards. Make sure it's quite long, quite a few pieces, and then what we're going to want to do is select all of the straight pieces we just added and the loop up to where the loop starts. And then we're going to drag the sort of turny thing and we're going to drag it outwards. Now, as you can see, it does something ridiculous. And if you hold shift, it does even something more ridiculous. But if you hold control whilst doing this, it smooths it out, so it can go whatever way you want it to. Now, we want to make sure that we drag that out to a point where the ride doesn't intersect itself. So you've got to make sure you've got enough clearance, so if someone's got their hand out of the train, they're not going to hit the track. Element order and pacing of a roller coaster is really important. You don't just want to have element after element that's the same, because you're going to get tired, it's going to be too intense, it's going to be uncomfortable. What you need is a good balance of pacing, so you need some sort of nice sweeping turns with airtime between your elements. Your elements also need to get smaller with each time you do one, on the basis that you're losing energy to friction, and you only ever had that initial drop to power you, so each element must be smaller than the last. It should also be rather different. So in this case, I built an immerlin, which is like a loop, but then you turn out of it. And I've done that because what I want is at the end of it, I want it to cross over itself. If the track crosses over itself, then you get near misses and head choppers, and it's just way more visually interesting. Airtime's another key aspect of roller coaster design, so it's where the train's sort of throwing you upwards, so you feel like you've got no weight, you get that floating feeling in your stomach. It's fantastic, and in my opinion there's no better form of airtime than a zero-G roll, so I'm going to show you how you make one of them. So let's turn angle snapping on to 11.25 and keep the element at 8 meters in length. We're then going to have it to 22.5 and then place and then up to 45 degrees. And this is where we're going to start banking, so make sure your banking offset's on, and we're going to go to 90 degrees and bring that down to 33.75. We're then going to go into 180, so we're completely upside down at that point, and we're going to flatten that off. And we're just going to mirror that again, so we're going to go down to the 33 and turn it another 90 degrees. Make sure you're turning the same way, because otherwise it's a bit weird. So we're going to go to 90 and place, and then we're going to, well, place that, and then we're going to go down to, well, 0 and down to 45 in sort of vertical plane, and then we're just going to smooth on out. Now, it looks janky, very janky, but this is where we're going to go and smooth it. Now, it's key that we keep that sort of banking offset, so the way we smooth it, we need to just select pieces at the right time. So you can select the whole thing, because currently it's too short. The previous element was 24 meters. We've come absolutely flying through here, like so, way too fast. So we're going to drag it upwards. We want to aim sort of 20-ish thereabouts, because the last one was 24. We had 31, 24, somewhere 20, 21 thereabouts. So 21's good, and we're going to smooth that and it'll bring it down a bit. So smooth the whole thing, and then what I'm going to recommend is that we go and select pieces, so we're just doing 2 at a time. We'll smooth forwards and then we'll smooth backwards. Really is as simple as that. I wanted a quick and easy way to do a 0-G roll. You can do it in way more depth, and as you play the game more, I'm sure you'll get better at it and find your own tips and tricks, but I think that is the easiest starting way to do a 0-G roll. And just look how the train comes through here. Should we go at the right speed this time so you feel weightless, and it's a lovely turn. Beautiful. Another common element is the humble corkscrew, especially for this type of ride, where it will go through the mid-course brake run, which is there for block sections. I'm going to get to block sections in a second, but I'm going to show you how to build a corkscrew. Now, corkscrews are quite loose. There's not really strict rules to follow for them, because there's all sort of varieties, and they can either be quite tight in their turn or quite shallow, or they can be really tall or really short. So I'm just going to show you just basically the rules behind them, where they follow this sort of S-curve where they bank into them quite tightly, building to a point where in the middle they are at 180 degrees in banking, so that they're completely upside down. The turn's sort of levelled out, so it's just perpendicular to where it wants to go. And in verticality and pitch, it's also at 0. And then the second element just mirrors that backwards. Now, I've built that one a bit short, because it's 17 metres before and only 11. You'd be flying through it way too fast. So I'm going to gradually ease off the height on that. Go to 180 again, where I then level out the turn to 0. Ta-da, thereabouts. Yeah, there we are. And then we just mirror it. So we do the same turn the other way, where we curve outwards and bend down. And it really is as simple as that. Corkscrews are very easy. Now, what we wanted to do is a interlocking corkscrew, because they look really cool. On ride and off ride. So it's quite simple, really. We've done corkscrew one way, where it's standing at, what's that, 12 metres? And all we need to do is turn around 180 degrees thereabouts, Just let me level that off. So we do a nice little turn, and what we want to do is have the end of this turn line up thereabouts. Doesn't have to be exact, but close to where the other side is. So once we're where the other side is, we just repeat it again. We just make a slightly smaller corkscrew. Make it, so in this instance it was 12 metres before, so now we just want to make it 9 metres tall, because that'll give you the clearance between the train and the track when people's arms are extended. So you just try and mirror what you did before. There's no strict rules in it. I encourage you to mess around, experiment, make mistakes. The game's so good at being able to correct them that you can just go in and change them. It's not like real life. You can go in and just edit things when you don't like them. Ending the ride can be tricky, so I'm going to recommend that you work backwards here. So when you are in the coaster builder, just click on the end, and what I recommend is bring this back to 4 metres and angle the track so it points in the rough direction in where you want. It doesn't have to be exact, just somewhere right. And then what you want to do is get a block section. So pick that, catwalk on from realism, and make this at least 18 metres long. That is the length of your train, so make sure that a train can fit in the block. I would then separate that with another small piece of track, and what I would do with this one is bring it back to 4 metres and angle it up ever so slightly, like a couple of degrees at best. And the reason for that is so that when the brakes release, it can just freewheel down rather than needing to be powered. That's what real roller coasters do. And again, make sure your brake run is at least 18 metres long and enough room to stop the train, so I made that one 20 metres. And then simply connect up to the end of that. It's far easier than trying to connect to the station and getting the brakes in the right place. That's a real pain. This way, much simpler. Block sections are a really key part of roller coaster design. It allows you to run more trains. So currently what we've got is one train on the track, and it doesn't let us add another one because the station's just not long enough. You would want a longer station for more trains. But in real life, that's not how it works. You don't have a crazy long station, you have block sections. So if we switch it to block section now, what it will do is it will allow one train per block section, providing the one in front is empty. So it's got a lift hill. It's got this section up until the mid-course brake run, which is what this is and why I added it in. It's then got the next block section, which is the track after it, which is down here and along through that. And then you've got the brake run, and there's enough brake run block sections for every train to be parked there. Now, if we go into the settings, and operations, and let's change the number of trains. Now it will let you put 4 on the track. Now we don't want 4 because it's going to just keep stacking, it's going to get stuck, and there's just not enough space for it, so we're going to keep it at 3 so that the number of trains can be on the brake run at any one time, because in the event of emergency it's easier to get everyone off. Now to demonstrate how these block sections work, we're going to see this train ascend the lift hill, and the train in front of it is in the block section in front. Now what will happen is that this first train will be making its way through the circuit whilst the second train ascends the lift. But if the second train is ascending the lift is faster than the previous train clears the block section, then it stops the top, like so. And this train will wait here until the block section is cleared. Now, as we can see, the train's just gone through that block section, it's cleared, so now this train's free to go. Now clearly we don't want that. We don't want trains waiting at the top. We don't want trains waiting anywhere. It ruins the ride experience. So if we go into operations, we can fix that by just changing the minimum interval time to 30 seconds, which is the length of the longest block. You'll need to play around with this a bit, but I happen to know for this ride it's 30 seconds. If you can master these building block skills, then the possibilities are truly endless. You can start swapping chain lifts for launches, sit downs for stand-ups, and you can hit that subscribe button to get future tutorials or to see my latest park, Wonderland Point.